Hello and welcome to this Studio Yorktown tutorial. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the Meiji Pro template, so let's get started. First thing, we need to switch off the switch me off first. This layer here is just there to reduce the file size, so as soon as we load the template we click this off and then we're good to go. I think the best way to show you how to use the template is to just go ahead and use it and explain what I'm doing as I go through. In the folder paper sheets, this contains all the different paper sizes that are contained within the Meiji template. So I'm going to add a A4 vertical sheet, and to switch the layers on, you simply click by the side and switch them on. Inside all of the different paper sizes, we're using the same type of layering system. So you'll find forms and folds, effects, and paper options. Now I'm going to drag this over to the middle of our canvas, and I'm going to go to forms and folds, and within the forms and folds you'll find different forms and folds for the different paper types. For example, I've got a 2-crease fold here, I've got a poster fold. I can turn this into a book if I like, or I can just have it flat. So very quickly and easily you can change the shape and shadow casting and form of the different paper sizes. So that's the forms and folds. If I go into effects, you'll see here we've got metallic foil stamping, holographic foil stamping, spot UV gloss, embossed and debossed. Using the effects is really simple, and you can use multiple effects at the same time. All you have to do is go into the folder, click and open it, and all of the smart object layers within the template are marked in green, and anything with purple means that you can modify it, but anything in green means it's a smart object where you can place your design. So I'm going to double click inside the metallic foil stamp for the A4 vertical, which is this one here. I'm now going to add in a design. And then I'm going to click and save smart object, and there we go. Now we have the metallic foil stamp applied to our A4 vertical. I can now also change the form and folds even though we have an effect applied, which gives us lots of versatility. You can change the color for the metallic stamping simply by clicking. If you have the palettes installed, you can just click and change the color accordingly. Let's switch back to gold. In the hot foils texture, if you double click and drag on the canvas, you can change the location of where the highlights are. If you have the foil textures installed with the hot foil texture layer selected, you can click and change the design and type of reflection that you're using. Let's zoom in and have a closer look. So once again, with the hot foil texture layer selected, we go to our Studio Yorktown foil textures folders, and here I'm going to apply the holographic squares, and as you can see we've now applied holographic textures to the metallic stamping. We can then go to the metallic foil, and we're free to change the colors as we please until we find the desired effect. So that's the metallic foil stamping, and the same applies for all of the other effects, embossed and debossed. You simply have to place your design into the appropriate smart object folder. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to switch off the effects, the metallic foil stamping, and I'm going to close the layer folder. Now there's quite a lot of folders in this template, so it's a good practice to switch off or close any templates folders that you're not using, just so that it's easier to navigate. So now I'm going to go into the paper options folder, and I'm going to show you the options that we have in here. So from bottom to top, the A4 paper color allows us to change the color of the paper simply by either clicking the palette if you have one installed, or double click and use the color picker to select whichever color you would like. That lets you change the overall color of the base of the specific paper type. If we go into vertical image placeholder, this is a smart object layer. So if we double click into this, I'm going to add a design in here. For example, let's place this in the center. Click and save. And as you can see, this has now been placed on the paper sheet. And you can still go through and change the colors after the fact. So if you have a design, your design will be transparent and the paper color is taken up from underneath. So that gives you some, it makes it easy to try different variations if you want to try it quickly. Alternatively, you can double click on the smart object layer and let's try placing a full image in here. So let's place this here, click save, and as you can see, this now takes over the whole image. So that's the use of the image placeholder. And if we just close this folder and we go into A4 horizontal, you'll see that it's the same layer system in all of the different paper sizes. So once you know how to use one of them, you can use them all. So going back to A4 vertical, I'm going to get rid of this picture and I'm going to click save and give us a blank sheet. Now if I go into the paper texture, I think this is best if I zoom in. In the paper textures, the Meiji template comes with a selection of different paper types. So with the A4 paper texture selected, you can click if you have them installed and change very easily different paper types. And these could be mixed and matched with the different effects, different images, and so on. So very easy to change the paper type. You can try the different paper types with different colors. So you have a lot of freedom there. I'm going to select a dark color to demonstrate this next effect. So let's try a dark blue. I'm going to try a simpler texture. The A4 paper, the special paper material, if I click this on, by default is set to gold flakes. So if we zoom in, you can see we have these very nice craft, Japanese style craft paper gold flakes. But there are other special textures. So with the special paper material layer selected, we can click and we can turn it into a very nice mulberry washi type paper. Or we can try with a kind of vellum cotton paper type, or back to the original gold flakes. To move the flakes, we just double click on the layer and click and drag, and we can move our textures around as we desire. And again, we can change the paper color to whatever we please. And this as well can be mixed and matched with the different paper types and forms and folds to create something unique. We can also go into our effects like before. Let me try Studio Yorktown logo in the bottom left. Click and save. I'm going to change the color to something golden. Switch it on and change this to our regular metallic. Click and drag to achieve the shine that we like. And there we have, very quickly put together, really interesting design. Now let's take a quick look at the transparent objects, but first I'm going to change the background color to something a little bit more vibrant to make it easier to demonstrate. I'm going to change the paper sheet color here to something lighter as well for demonstration. Now, in the transparent objects folder, you'll see here that we have acrylic block, acrylic invitation, and ruler. So I'll start with the ruler because it's the most useful one if you want to show your mockups at scale. The ruler is actually scaled correctly. So, for example, the size of the ruler and the size of the A4 paper should correspond to the real world number of centimeters. So if you ever are making a mock-up and you want to demonstrate that the actual size comparisons, then you can do that by switching the ruler on. Next, I'm going to show you the acrylic invitation. So if we switch this on, you'll see the acrylic invitation pop up. This is a C6 sized invitation sheet of acrylic, which is perfect for things like wedding invitations. It works perfectly with the C6 envelope, which I'll show you later. For now, I'll show you another cool feature of this. If we open it up, you'll see it has metallic foil print, and on the acrylic blocks we only have a metallic foil and the normal screen printing on there. So things like emboss and deboss are not available for the acrylics. But if we go to the bottom here and we click on acrylic tint color, you can go to your palette. If we click, you'll see straight away we can get a very cool tint for our invitation sheet, which gives us a whole bunch of creative possibilities. So I'm going to switch this back to something plain. If we go to the invitation placeholder and I double click on this, I'm going to place a design on there. Let's try the grid columns. And I'm going to make them white. Click Save the Smart Object. And as you'll see, we've got realistic shadow being cast in the correct direction, so everything is consistent. We can go through and we can change the tint color if we want to. So this gives us a huge bunch of creative possibilities. And as always, if we want to move an object, we just have to click on the highest folder, or we right click and we go to acrylic invitation. Everything is nicely labeled in the template file, and then we can click and drag and move it around as we please. I'm going to switch off the placeholder and I'm going to go into the metallic foil print. Again, we can see here's the smart object layer. I'm going to use the Studio Yorktown logo, lower right, and click Save. And here we go. We've got our screen printed metallic hot foil on our invitation. So this would be perfect for things like wedding invitations, signage, and so on. Now I'm going to quickly show you the acrylic block. This works pretty much the same way as the acrylic invitation, only that this one is horizontal and is a slightly thicker piece of acrylic, as you can see from the light refraction around the side, but it's quite striking. It's something that you can use if you want to make a focal point or create a bit of visual interest, or however you figure out to use it. Again, it has the acrylic tint color, which can be changed very easily by clicking and selecting a color. It also has the smart objects layer for the design placeholder and the metallic foil print as before. So I'm going to set this color to something neutral, and I'm going to switch on the acrylic invitation, and let's move this over to here, and I'm going to switch on the ruler as well. And I just wanted to show something very cool quickly. So I'm going to change the background color back to gray to make this easier. I'm going to change the A4 paper color again to gray. And I'm going to switch off the special paper material. I'm going to switch off the metallic foil stamping, and I'm going to use the spot UV gloss here. So I'm going to go into the placeholder, and I am going to load in our test pattern and click save. Now you see, if I zoom in, we've got a spot gloss effect, and what you'll probably notice is the reflections across the entire template are consistent. So everything matches. You don't have reflections that seem like they're out of place or a different color. So I'm going to show you, if you might have seen this folder near the top which says global textures. If we go into global textures and we go into global refraction and we go into global reflection texture, we have to keep this layer switched off, but you can double click in it. If I click in there, you'll see that we have a texture which is the same texture in the rest of the document. However, we can change the reflections in the Meiji Pro template. So let's replace this with another gloss texture, for example. Click enter, save. Once it calculates, you'll see that across the entire template, including the spot UV, whichever texture we decide to use for reflection is now consistent across the entire template. So if for any reason you want to change the reflection, it's really very simple. You just go to the global textures, double click into the smart object, and change your texture accordingly. I'm going to switch this back now. So now that we've had a quick look through the transparent objects, I'm going to close that folder. I'm going to close the paper sheets. Actually, let me switch off the ruler for now. And I am going to show you the envelopes. So let's open up the envelope folder. Now, as mentioned before, there's a C6 envelope, which is perfect for things like invitations and cards and so on. And then we have a DL size envelope. We have a front view for the DL size envelope. We've got a back view, which is semi-open, and then we have a DL, which is fully opened. So these work pretty much as you might expect. If you go into the paper options for the DL, the fully open one, you'll see that we've got a placeholder for the inside and for the outside. So these can be independent of each other. So for example, if I go into the inner envelope design placeholder and I place, let's say, this picture of Mount Fuji, and let's desaturate it for a bit of interest. Click and save. Now you'll see inside the envelope we've got a cool picture of Mount Fuji. Now if I want to change the envelope color itself, I go to the envelope back design, and I can even apply some kind of maybe pattern onto this, like so. Let's change the color to red. Let's make this very, very faint, just for demonstration purposes. Click and save. In here, as you'll see, now we've got a very cool envelope design, exactly how you want it. So we'll switch the DL off, and the back semi-open pretty much does the same thing. So these textures are linked, so if you change this one, it will change this one. This one is merely halfway open, so that makes it very easy to change your designs as you please and come up with some interesting stuff. I'm going to switch these off. DL envelope front again works the same way. So in paper options, I can go into the paper options, add a logo or something like that. Click and choose a color. Click save. Let it update, and we have that. So that's the basic DL size envelopes. Now the C6 envelope is a little bit more complex because there's a lot more options here. So let's have a look at this one. For the C6, we've got an outer envelope design and we've got an inner envelope design, just like the DL that I showed before. So let's have a quick look at that. Let's look at the liner design. Here's a floral design made with our Kurohana assets. I'm going to click and I'm going to save this. And now you can see we have that placed on the inside. On the outer lining, I'm going to click and let's try another design made with Kurohana. We click and save. And there we go. So we've now got our inner design and our outer design. That looks quite nice. Here you'll see on the right hand side, we've got envelope lid closed. And then we've got another one here that says envelope lid open. So with the C6, you can actually have the lid open or closed. If I want the envelope closed, then I have to switch off this layer here that says envelope lid open. So that gets switched off. And then I click on envelope lid closed. And as you can see, now we have the envelope lid. And you can see it continues the same design that we used for the outer placeholder here. You can also see that this has got this gold lip around the edge of the flap. And if we go into the envelope lid closed, you'll see that there is a metallic foil stamping folder in there. And if I go inside that, this envelope lid placeholder, and I double click in there, you'll see that there's lid piping, which is optional. I could switch that on and off, and I can place any design that I want, like the logo. And if I click save, you'll see that we now have the Studio Yorktown logo printed in hot foil, and I can click and drag and change the highlights just like the rest of the layers. So I'll leave that on and I'll close this down. I'll keep the lid closed. And here in the inner envelope, this is now here there is a folder called envelope body, which refers to this part of the envelope. So if I go into the envelope body, there's again hot foil stamping. If I load that, you'll see that there is upper piping and there is lower piping. Now, if the envelope is fully open, then you would be able to see this inner piping. If you wanted it, you can switch it on. If you only wanted to have the lower part of the envelope with piping, then you can switch the lower one off. If for any reason you want both of them off, or you wish to use your own design, then that is all completely possible. So for this example, I'm going to keep the lower piping on, have the Studio Yorktown logo. I'm going to click, save, and now you can see that we've got the lower piping. And if I click the lid closed off and open the envelope, then there we can see. So we have a ton of creative options at our disposal. I'm going to switch the design off, and I'm going to save this. Now I'm just going to drag this over somewhere here, and as I mentioned before, the C6 envelope is the same size as the C6 acrylic invitation. When you open up the C6 envelope folder, let me just close the rest of these down so that it's not confusing. You'll see there is a folder here in orange. Any items inside the envelope go in here. So if for any reason I wanted to put this acrylic invitation inside the envelope, what I have to do is I have to right click on acrylic invitation. So I'm going to go into our transparent objects, into acrylic invitation, and make sure this folder is closed. And what I do is then I drag the acrylic invitation into the folder here that says any items inside the folder go here. This will just position the layer in exactly the right place so that when I drag it over, it looks like it's inside the envelope, right? So that way I can design something like a wedding invitation and I know that it's gonna pop perfectly inside the envelope. So that is a little more complex than the rest of the template, but it does give a whole ton of creative possibilities once you get used to it. So now I'm going to demonstrate the business cards. First, I'm going to close the folders just so that the template is nice and tidy. Now the business cards are inside the business cards folder. We have both vertical and horizontal orientations. So business card 1 and 2 vertical, and business card 1 and 2 horizontal. Now the reason there's 1 and 2 is because they can either be two different designs, or you can imagine that one of them is the front and one of them is the back for both the vertical and the horizontal. So let's switch them on so we can have a look. Now, as you'll see, the designs by default have a stack shadow which comes with them. Let me move this one over. If we open up the folder, we've got shadow and texture options, effect, and paper options. If we click and open up the shadow and texture options, you'll see that we've got floating shadow and we've got stacked shadow. If I switch off the stacked shadow and switch it to floating, now we have a card which is now floating above the mockup. If we want it to seem like it's grounded, then we just switch on the stacked shadow, and these shadows are all photographically captured. So this is not done with any kind of CGI. This is all photoreal and accurate. So we keep consistency across the entire template. If I close the texture options, inside the effects, we've got the effects like the rest of the template: metallic foil stamping, holographic, spot UV, embossed and debossed. We also have paper options. So in the paper options, we have special texture, vertical texture, we have a placeholder, and the card color. So we can easily change the base card color as before, or we can load in a design the same with the rest of the template. So that is the business cards. Lastly, I'm going to show you the overlays folder and the add-on items folder. Now these two folders are just there to keep your mockup neat and tidy if you happen to be adding any additional Studio Yorktown asset packs. For example, we have a selection of overlays which are included with the Meiji Pro package. To use them, all you have to do is navigate to the folder where you unzipped your template, go into the Meiji overlays folder, and you'll see a selection of 9 overlays which can be used to add shadow and drama and some light to your mockups and add an extra level of realism. So let's select 01. We drag it over to our Photoshop canvas and it'll appear. Now, just to keep the file tidy, it's good to drag it into the overlays folder like so. Let's open that. And with all the overlays which are included with Meiji Pro, these all use the overlay blending mode. However, some other packs such as Kesho will use the linear light blending mode. So just check with the specific pack that you're using and see which blending mode is required to get it to work. All the ones which are included with Meiji are using the overlay blending mode, so just bear that in mind. The add-on items folder is if you would like to use our Ikebana pack, which is a selection of photographic elements which can be added to give an extra level of realism or to give it some drama and an organic quality. So I've already loaded an asset from that pack. In order to use that, all you have to do is open up one of the Ikebana assets. And what we're going to do here is we're going to drag the folder over to our mockup. The easiest way is just to make sure that the folder is selected in the layers palette and then click and drag from the canvas over. And as you can see, this will bring in the asset. We can see the folders popped up here, Peregrina buds. So to keep it neat and tidy, we need to drag this folder into the add-on items folder, and that way we can keep our mockup nice and neat. Then with the Control T or the transform command, Command T, we can resize. And the reason these work is because there is 2 different layers. One is the photographic information and the other is the shadow information, which is why these are stored inside folders themselves. And by separating them, we can make use of a much more realistic and convincing shadow. So that's how to bring in your Ikebana and additional assets into Meiji Pro. And that pretty much is all you need to know for making exciting mockups. Go wild, try new and exciting things, and look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thank you.